everybody, welcome to Caketastic Cakes. If you're interested in making a very simple and very effectively pretty princess themed cake or Cinderella cake, as you can see in this little zippity doodah here, follow along and I'll show you how it's done. Okay, I'm going to start out now with some light blue colored fondant. I use sky blue and I'm rolling it over my cake, which is an 8-inch diameter cake. It's about 4 inches tall. Smoothing it down with my paddle, and then I'm just using a pizza cutter that I have in my drawer, and I'm cutting off the extra. So just trim nice and careful around so you don't cut into the bottom, but just try to cut it straight down as much as you can. And there you go. So then scoot your cake onto the cake plate, because sometimes I cover my cakes on the counter and sometimes I do it on the cake plates. I'm just kind of all over on certain things. Now, this is going to become part of the decorations. This is just some white fondant, and I used a cut or a tip that I had that I like the size of, and I just made a bunch of loops all down the one end. And if you flip it over, you don't see those ugly little marks as much. And now I'm making the ruffle for the dress. I made a whole bunch of them, and you know, there's a lot on there, but I'm going to trim away some and angle it so you'll see. Now when I'm putting my layers on, I'm just attaching it with a little bit of water, and I am staggering it so that the one curve sits between the peak of the other two below it, kind of like a fish scale effect, I guess you could say. And I'm going to do this up the front of the dress, and I thought I had enough there, but I needed to make one more, so you're going to see in a second here. I'm trimming off the extra at an angle, and then all of a sudden, poof, there's an extra layer right there. Yeah, just it needed to be a little bit taller than I had made it, so I just made one more and stuck it on there. Okay. Now, some more of that blue fondant, that light blue. I use sky blue, I think I mentioned that. And I cut out 2 squares of it, and I am just wrinkling it up. I'm just putting folds in it as best I can, trying to avoid putting fingernail marks into it as best I can. And then I'm going to drape it from the top of the one side so it covers up the edge that I cut of the white ruffled trim there, and kind of flows and cascades down to the side. See? Lovely. Okay. Doing it one more time. There's that light blue color, rolled it out. That was what I used to make my square, by the way. It was my cake tier lifter. So once again, make my folds, put my ruffles there so it connects at the top, just mushing it into place because fondant's good like that. Drape it so it covers that edge on the white. Lovely. Now I'm going to trim it so that the edge of the sides were flat with the top. Now real quick, I'm going to show you here a little bow that I make. I don't know, this is how I make bows. They're not the prettiest, but they are still pretty. I got to give myself some credit. I just folded those 2 sides over, as you saw, smush it in the side on either side, and down in the center you get a big ugly wrinkle. But if you take a piece that's nice and oval and put a dip kind of in the middle and wrap it around to hide all the ugly, you actually get a pretty little bow out of it. So my little life hack there. Okay. And now for the topper. Now I started with gum paste. You could probably use fondant if you added some CMC or Tylose powder to it, but I like gum paste. I'm using gum paste. I rolled out some white pretty thin, maybe 1/4 of an inch thick, cut out a circle. It's about a 3-inch circle, and I tapered the edges. I just kind of pushed them down, pinched them around, and now I'm using my roll-in pin to try to get some of those lumps and bumps out. I'm using a larger circle to just smooth up my edges because, it got a little sloppy looking. And that's going to be the basis for my coach. I'm putting 2 indentations, one kind of on either side, like a 1/4 of the way through. And then I'm going back over those indentations with my veining tool there and deepening them, making them wider. And this is going to give my coach more of a pumpkin-y kind of look. I suppose you could put one more down the middle if you want, but I was just keeping it a little bit more simple. And so I just did the 2. Now I'm using some silver edible spray. It's just a Wilton brand. And I'm spraying all around my pumpkin, and now I'm going to put it aside and let it dry. And I did mention that you could use gum paste or fondant with this decoration as long as you treat the fondant. So if you ever have any questions about the difference between the 2, I'll put a link to my one video that explains the difference between gum paste and fondant in case you're curious. Now back to the decoration. I've taken some of my white gum paste and I've rolled it out using my fondant paddle there till it's nice and long and thin, divided it in half and cut it, and I'm going to use these pieces to create the wheels for my carriage. So I start out with just a little loop in the center and I loop it around, I guess you could call it twice, and I'm going to have it just go down toward the center. My loops though don't touch. So you want like the classic Cinderella Disney version. The spiral vines, I guess, of the pumpkin are what make up the wheels. So that's kind of the look I'm going for here. I don't want them to touch. I want them to have that spirally look. And because it is gum paste, it will harden and hold its shape, and I'll show you in my next video when I put it on the cake and make the cake how I make this into a standing decoration too. Now I've got a circle there that's about the same size as my pumpkin, and I'm using a stick to have it all sitting flat. I don't want my wheels up in the air when I have it standing on the cake later on. My pumpkin has dried, so now I'm giving it another coat. You can see it was a little patchy before, so it looks better now. Again, put it aside, let it dry. Now this is a molding set that I got. I believe it's a Wilton brand. It's just leaves and swirls and fancynesses, you know? And so that's what I'm using to make the decorations for my carriage. This was purchased at Walmart, easily available, not that expensive, and I've used it for a lot of different things, but princess cakes, it comes up pretty often, I will admit. All right, I'm using some of my different sizes there. I've got different shapes, and I'm going to use those little ones kind of a lot. So that's what I'm going to start with for now. Those two little ones there, I'm going to make into a heart shape. See how they just kind of go together? And then if you actually pull the bottoms out and pinch them together, there you go. You got a little heart out of it. I'm going to put that on the top of my carriage. Now my silver pumpkin has dried, and so I'm going to put the pieces together to make sure it all fits together. And then I'm going to go back and paint everything, you'll see soon, a gold shimmer to go with the silver of the pumpkin. And that is the larger piece that I have. I'm going to put that in the back, what's going to be, I guess, I consider the back of the carriage. It's going to be where the coachman would stand if there were any luggage or whatever like that. So that's the coachman's seat back there. I've got a slightly smaller one in the front. Again, I could have this backwards. Don't hold me, totally accountable on this. Smaller one in the front for where the horseman would sit, or the driver, whatever you call it. So yes, I just have different sizes there. If you want to go symmetrical, with yours, go ahead. It just will still look pretty. Okay, this is going to be the window/door of the carriage. I just cut out a nice circle shape that I thought was a good size, piecing it together, and I'm going to make it more oval shaped rather than completely circular. So I got my oval shape, I got a couple more of those little ones. I'm going to give my little window some bunny ears because why not? Makes it look a little bit more festive. When I'm happy with everything, it's time to paint it all gold. So I'm using a little bit of some alcohol and my gold edible shimmer there, and I just start painting. The only problem with this is that, of course, you can only get the top and the bottom and the sides so well, and the back not at all, unless you let everything dry and then flip it. Now, since my cake is not going to be viewed from behind, I'm not worried about how it looks from behind. And so this is when I say, perfect, good enough. All right, moving on. Time to attach my pieces. You can see that the gum paste too, when I'm moving it right now and, moving the decorations around, they're starting to set up. Adding the alcohol with the shimmer to it did reintroduce moisture to them, so they are going to be a little bit more pliable again. But no problem, they will dry up again. Ooh, sorry for that jiggle there. I bumped my camera. Okay, again, lining everything up so it sits nice and flat, and just putting my pieces back together. So I add a little bit of water on my paintbrush, or water if you're from anywhere outside of the Philly area. And I'm connecting my pieces together. You gotta be careful. Put the water on the back of your decoration, not on the silver shimmer, because you could accidentally just wipe it right off. All right, for my little door and window, I'm going to show you what I did here. I took a little circle that kind of fit the bottom of my oval there. I cut a little divot out, so now I've got a very sloppy kind of kidney bean shape. I put it underneath my frame there, and I'm going to trim off the extra because I want this to sit as flush as possible. I don't want layers of thickness, so that if you look at it, you're like, oh, the frame for the door is sticking out at me for some reason. So I trim it all down until it tucks in very nice and neat. I have some pink gum paste that I rolled out very thin, just like the white, very thin. And I'm going to make those into curtains. And I just think the pink, the soft pink, just kind of suits it nicely. It goes well. Again, tracing it out, finding the right size circle, to get the nice angle of the trace I made, and then cutting out my shapes there. Now it's still pliable, so I'm just going to kind of mush it together at the top. Put a couple indentations in it on either side to make it look like folds in the curtains, I guess you could say. And because I trimmed it and I measured it, it just fits so perfectly on the very first try, and it's completely not because I edited this video and cut out the parts where I had to retrim it a little bit. Nope, perfect first try. Okay, I've got a couple more of my little gold pieces there to hide the joint at the bottom where the wheels come to the bottom of the carriage. Add a little bit of water carefully. I know I'm contradicting myself here. To the silver, but I've got so much covered that you're pretty much not going to see it. Press it down carefully. Make sure you don't leave silver or gold fingerprints anywhere. And let it set up for at least a day so it gets nice and hard. Now, in theory, I made this a day or two before, which I actually did. And I'm going to attach it. I just have a lollipop stick in the center of my cake, and I stuck it on with a little piece of gum paste on the back just to hold it upright. I placed my bow right at the top of my white train, or my little white ruffles there. And now I'm cutting out a nice long rectangle of gum paste once again, and my bow is gum paste, I don't know if I mentioned that, and cut a little triangular cut out of the bottom end to make my ribbon, and it's going to hide, you see how I make it wrap around the top of the blue ruffles so it's not all ugly. That side was a little too long, so I cut it short and just used some scissors to retrim my little triangle edge. And now for the final touch, a little dash of some silver heart-shaped sprinkles. And that's it. It's just really pretty. It's very simple. There's not a lot to it, but it's very pretty and very effective. So I hope you found this video helpful. Please like and subscribe because it really does help me out as well. I've got a ton of other videos out there, so please take a look. And as always, thank you for watching Caketastic Cakes.